Warum? Boy, we are starting off with a bang. Sorry. Start off with a mic on, and then this other stuff happens, and then I disappear, and then this thing happens, and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I had a good weekend, in spite of what it seems like. And I hope everybody had a good weekend. I'm Skip Alzheimer, and this is the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we normally are on it. Normally, like, boom. But for some reason, I got distracted, and I was in another room trying to set up something. Anywho, behind me, I have a scanner set up. We have a film on there, and we're going to watch it. This is today's newspaper. Enjoy. Which actually means it's yesterday's newspaper. Well, yesteryear's newspaper. All right, enjoy.
Editorial. Yes, just a minute, please. Jerry, it's for you, line 2.
Time, relentless, fleeting, has forever challenged the world of journalism. Today, in the technological 70s, the race with deadlines has become more costly, increasingly competitive, and far more sophisticated. The name of the game is to move the news, whether its source be local, national, worldwide, or from the far reaches of space. And there's plenty of it. A daily metropolitan newspaper has room for only the most pertinent wire service reports and electronic picture transmissions, and these are carefully selected by the editors. But it's the local stories and editorials that best express a newspaper's personality. The editor, responsible for reflecting an individual paper's policies and point of view, is often influenced by concerned readers who write in with their opinions. Rather than opinion, it's careful objectivity that counts for the dedicated staff reporters.
Well, I got the airport story, the noise, and the art to go with it.
What do you got here in the art?
Art of the woman and boy wearing earphones to protect them from noise and the demolition of a house.
Okay, it looks pretty good. Let me take a look at it and see how it goes.
Okay.
Do you have the address for the report?
I've been in newspaper work and news camera for about 15 years. And the challenge and the variety is the best thing in the job. I don't think there's any place that you could get as much satisfaction out of doing a job as in photojournalism. In my opinion, it's one of the most satisfying jobs on the paper.
For the most part, we're all frustrated athletes in one way or another. I think we started out probably playing sports in school. Well, I've tried my hand at news also, and I enjoy sports more because it's a bright spot in life. one of the advantages of being a sports writer is that you get to see all types of sports. But you have to continually build contacts within a team and within a sport. You have to keep talking to people, get a feeling for the sport.
In the people section, we're dealing with the most intimate aspect of our readers' lives. Things like clothing, food, shelter, the way they live, how they conduct their lives. There's been a tremendous change in sections like this during the past few years. Those of us in this area of the newspaper find our work extremely exciting. We try to show people as they're living. We try to bring them to life in our pages.
I started out working on a small rural newspaper. I've also reported police news and financial news. Now I'm developing feature stories for the Sunday supplement, and I also do in-depth stories for the daily editions. I like feature writing because it involves so many facets of journalism.
I've got a story here for Sunday, page 1, about some young lawyers in the area. I'd like to use Sunday, page 1.
Right. I've seen it. City editor passed it yesterday, and I gave it to the Sunday editor to see if he could come up with something in the way of a page 1 layout for the weekend. He gave me an idea here, which looks pretty good. We do have 3 pieces of art here with it.
It's separated by the type, and still have the color keys
right,
marked.
And we've got a head up here, young lawyers.
Yeah. Okay, that looks good. Why don't you take care of that process?
Good enough.
Okay.
Whatever the assignment, timing is the prime consideration to meet the deadlines of the various editions. And prior to press time, there's plenty of action around the rim of the copy desk. News copy is corrected, heads are written and approved, and the story identified on the makeup dummy. Makeup dummies, or layout pages, are prepared not only by the news editor and the copy desk, but by the specialized departments as well. To ensure proper balance in page layout, separate advertising dummies are prepared ahead of time.
Well, when the copy comes down from upstairs, the teletype setters, we receive it, and we punch it. They call us the TTS operators around the plant. Today, with all the emphasis on speed and efficiency, instead of hammering away at the linotype keyboard, it is our job to prepare punch tapes that operate lead typesetters automatically. It's strange going through the composing room these days without seeing operators at the linotype machines. And some people get the idea that the operators have been replaced by just pieces of tape, but they forget that someone somewhere had to punch these tapes, and it was probably me.
In the modern typesetting operation, linotype attendants now only change the coded punched tape and periodically remove columns of finished type for proofing. The rest of the job is automatic. The punched paper tapes instruct the linotype machines to justify column width and set lead in the proper type style and size, whether it be news copy or, as in this case, small type for a classified advertising column.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me read this back to you. Poodles, toy men, adorable silver males, $35.
In a modern newspaper's classified department, the handling of day-to-day accounts must be automated to the greatest degree possible. For here, too, deadlines must be constantly met and lived with. Local and chain merchants, manufacturers, and service companies take their wares and services into the homes of newspaper readers by means of display advertising, either in the daily editions or special supplements. Although there's a premium price for color, many newspaper advertisers are sold on it from the standpoint of high initial impact on the reader. An advertiser buys space in today's newspaper not only because of its skilled and experienced creative staff, but because of its area of influence. The national and retail advertising salesman sells a readership of roughly 3 times the the circulation figure.
You ought to have a little darker down here and on the shoulders and maybe just a little lighter, you know, some of these shadows out of here. Other than that, it's no complaints, fine.
Here in the paste-up department, we begin the actual production of display advertisements. For the heads as well as body copy type, we use a linofilm machine to punch up the program tape. This tape is then fed into a photographic processing machine that produces cold type on photographic paper for paste-up. The size of the finished display ad characters are determined by an enlarging or reducing lens, which works in conjunction with the various type-style grids. You know, when we think back to the days of hand-setting lead type, there's just no comparison, considering that equipment can now set cold type at the rate of around 1,000 characters a minute. Processing of the photographic paper with the composed letters on it is just a matter of seconds. After we paste up the display art, heads and copy blocks, all that's left to do is run a proof for the customer. Following client approval, the display ad goes to the photo engraving department to be made into zinc plates.
The process begins with the copy camera, used for advertising art and news photos alike. Fixed to the camera platen, news photographs and advertising art are normally screened at 85 lines per inch to produce a halftone. The negative from the camera is rapidly processed and placed against a zinc plate. A strong arc lamp is used to burn the image of the negative onto the plate's photosensitive surface. All that's left is the chemical processing, and the zinc plate is complete. Ready for trimming. Under magnification, the screening process that breaks the picture up into a series of dots is plainly visible. The proximity of the raised dots on the metal plate give the printed art and photographs their gradations. Now, the news photos, composed story type, and display ads come together for the first time in the chase. But the newspaper page is still 2 steps away from press time. Using a fiber-like material called a mat, a mold is made of the type and plates. The mat is covered with a blanket of cork and a sheet of steel and sent through the molder under high pressure. The finished matrix is an exact reproduction of the composed page. After curve forming the matrix, molten lead is poured to make a cast. Each of the resulting curved lead plates weighs about 40 pounds when trimmed. The finished cast, called a stereo plate, is now ready for the letterpress cylinder. As press time nears, the printers make final adjustment on the stereo printing plate, ensuring that they're positioned so that the newspaper is organized properly by sections. Each day, depending on number of pages and format, a newsprint is threaded through the letterpress in a different manner. Pressmen call this positioning the paper leading the web. This 3-story high-speed letterpress has 8 units, each capable of handling 16 pages and can print over 60,000 papers per hour. Some of the largest metropolitan dailies have presses over half a block long. Depending on size and number of cylinder units, some newspaper letterpresses are capable of printing well over 500,000 papers per hour. The master controls are located at the center of the press. Here also is where the printed paper is folded, cut, and sent by conveyors to the the wrapping and distribution area.
I can tell you that one of these monster presses of this type will use a lot of paper in the course of the day, and we can load 3 rolls at a time. Our pasters are semi-automatic, and they can be changed to full press speed. Our rolls weigh about 1,800 pounds, and they're 60 inches wide and 40 inches in diameter. We use about 60 rolls a day. It's a lot of paper to shove into the press in the course of a day.
Colored paper, though more costly, is used by many newspapers to designate different editions. And colored ink is used with increasing frequency for attention-getting headlines and advertisements. While a press run may last only from 2 to 3 hours, several editions may have to be completed in that time. At last, the race with the clock is coming to an end. The finished newspaper is ready for the customer. A paper's readers are interested in content, quality, and timeliness. Few of them are aware of the technological and human resources harnessed to meet the hour-by-hour deadlines. To the newspaper's publisher and to the key management people around him that are the decision makers, the business of meeting deadlines on a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week basis can cost large sums of money. But money isn't the only concern of publishing executives. Changing technology has made great strides in recent years, forcing new types of decision-making on newspaper management. One publishing advancement is the acceptance of the offset printing process. With the offset press, newspapers gain the advantage of improved definition, superior color capability, far cleaner operation, and above all, faster compositing time. The composing room in a modern offset newspaper is startling in its different appearance. Gone are the row after row of linotypes, chases, turtles, lead type cases, and other heavy mechanical equipment. Former hot type personnel have made an easy transition to photo composition, learning a vast array of new skills. News stories, when they come to the new offset composing room, have already been punched on paper tape by a TTS operator. The tape has been coded for type size and style, location in the newspaper, and column width has been justified by a digital computer. Inside the automatic compositor, a lightning-fast photographic type drum spins and exposes each letter in proper sequence at the fast rate of 28 lines of copy per minute. Once the story is recorded on photosensitized paper in a cassette, it's placed in a developer unit. Seconds later, the copy's ready for proofing and paste up. Other composing room workers operate similar automated equipment that produces story heads, display ad type, and headline copy. A makeup dummy, the same as used in a letterpress newspaper, indicates proper placement of copy and overall page format. With photocopy ready, the paste-up man can go to work. In the form of screen contact prints, news pictures and display ads come directly from the copy camera and are ready for pasting. Photo engraving is a thing of the past here. Next, a page-size photographic negative of the paste-up is made, and offset printing plates are prepared. In some newspaper plants, fully automated equipment is now capable of punching and diazo-coating these aluminum sheets at the rate of 100 per hour. The negatives are placed on top of the light-sensitized plates, and 2 at a time, they're fed into an automatic plate processing machine. First, a timed exposure through the negative to the diazo-coated aluminum. Second, the negatives are separated from the plates and returned to the start of the cycle for storage and future use. Next, the automatic developing cycle takes over. Followed by a rinse. A gum arabic solution is applied to the unetched surface of each plate. This step allows the ink of the offset press to adhere only to the plate's high image surface. The processing is complete. All that remains is to crimp the plate ends and attach to the offset press cylinders. The final product from the new plate making room, a printing plate finer than any heavy lead stereo plate and of a quality that rivals rotogravure. Press speed is obtained very rapidly with offset, and the machinery is more precise than letterpress. The offset press is relatively new to a large number of newspapers, but the importance of the process is growing. The press room itself is cleaner. Gone is the familiar ink fog hanging over the production areas of many newspapers. In elementary terms, offset means just that. The paper never touches the aluminum printing plate. The ink goes from the plate to a blanket roller, which in turn transfers it to the newsprint. A water solution keeps clean all those areas of the plate not requiring ink. One of the big advantages of the offset system, as far as the printing press itself is concerned, is the plate registration and the superior color quality that results. With this capability, there's an added advantage of being able to produce commercial and special supplement work during normal press downtime. This, then, is the culmination of recent technological progress in the newspaper business. A finished product of unquestionably high quality. For offset has proven itself as a practical way to publish a better newspaper.
I feel a little bit more grounded. Gave me some time to kind of relax, kind of see what was going on. So it was flipped upside down because if you watched on Friday, I was trying to show a bunch of these snipes, 35 millimeter snipes, and some of them were backwards or upside down. And so I was trying to compensate, go forward on a reel and then go backwards on a reel. But in doing that messed everything up. So, yikes. Let's learn about the scientific method. I don't know have we watched this film? I don't see it in my my list. But I'm gonna look one more time. So I have a list of all the films that we've shown. And I'll share it in the links in the comments. And this is a place you can go and look and see everything that we've shown. We haven't seen it, Abundant Universe. Thank you. All right. Well, here's Scientific Method. Enjoy.
Once in modern times, what is? We know that a scientist gains knowledge through observation of physical facts. He employs many devices, from the microscope to the atom smasher, to look at physical objects and events. He works with intricate measuring and counting devices. He makes use of any number of experimental techniques. But all of these are merely aids to observation. Most think about what he sees, to reason a problem through from observed facts to observable results. To find out how a scientist thinks through a problem, let's consider an example from modern medicine. Medical science today owes much to one of the great scientific achievements of recent times, the discovery of penicillin, a wonder drug now saving thousands of lives. This is penicillin, a powerful destroyer of deadly bacteria that is produced from an ordinary mold. Until a few years ago, penicillin was unknown. The discovery was a remarkable achievement of the scientific method. It began in the year 1928 in London, in the laboratory of Dr. Alexander Fleming, a British bacteriologist. For a number of years, Fleming had been seeking a drug that would destroy types of bacteria that cause infection. Just now, he was growing a number of colonies of these infectious bacteria for his experiments. Scientists call these growths bacterial cultures. This day, he found that one of his bacterial cultures had become polluted. A spot of mold had developed in the dish, spoiling the culture. Dr. Fleming was about to throw the polluted dish away when something stopped him. He noticed that around the mold there was a ring of clear jelly, free of bacteria. Examining the jelly more closely, he began to wonder if something in the mold was killing the bacteria. Was it possible that here was a substance that could be used to prevent infection? This was a question worth investigating.
I say, gentlemen, here's something interesting. Take a look at this dish.
Of this? Oh, yes. Got a bit moldy, hasn't it? That's too bad. But after all, it happens all the time.
No, take a closer look. You notice anything odd?
Why? Why?
See that ring?
Why, yes. It's clear, isn't it?
Right. I'd say something in that mold is destroying the starch in that dish.
That is interesting. What do you make of it?
I don't know. I think it's worth looking into. It looks good. Very good.
Well, I say, do you think perhaps there's something there we ought to follow up?
Perhaps. And perhaps, gentlemen, we've got a drug that will destroy infectious bacteria. But before we know, we've got work to do. Come in.
Dr. Fleming and his assistants undertook a number of experiments to test his idea that the mold might be a weapon against disease. First, they introduced the mold-infested broth into other cultures of bacteria. Later, they found that in many of these cultures, too, the bacteria were destroyed. But Dr. Fleming wondered if bacteria might it not also be harmful to living tissues. To determine this, they injected the drug into animals. They found that the animals were not harmed by the drug. Then, mixing it with human blood, Dr. Fleming determined that it did not harm the germ-killing cells in the bloodstream. Dr. Fleming reached the conclusion that he had found a drug that would destroy bacteria and that some evidence indicated would not harm human tissues. He published a paper describing his experiments. But this was only the beginning. 10 years later, another British scientist, Dr. Howard Florey, conducted a number of experiments to verify Fleming's findings, and then, along with other scientists, developed penicillin as a drug of amazing power against disease. But let's review this remarkable discovery as an example of scientific method. First, a scientist begins with the perception of a problem. Dr. Fleming had been trying to find a drug that would prevent infection. This, combined with his long training and observation, enabled him to recognize a problem in the accident of the mold polluting the dish. The second step was to make preliminary observations. This brought him to the third stage in scientific method, thinking of a hypothesis or possible solution to the problem. Now came the fourth stage of scientific method, the long series of experiments which Dr. Fleming and later Dr. Florey and others carried on to test the validity of Dr. Fleming's hypothesis. This led to the final stage, the solution of the problem. Penicillin was established as a drug of amazing effectiveness against infection. These, then, are the elements of the scientific method. First, perception of the problem. Second, preliminary observations to suggest solutions. Third, the development of one or more hypotheses. Fourth, the testing of these hypotheses through extended observation or experimentation. Fifth, the choice of a workable solution to the problem. This is the method the scientist applies to any problem in which facts can be observed, and this is also the method of common sense. Thinking people use the same method to solve all the everyday problems having to do with observable facts. For instance, scientific thinking is as necessary to a garage mechanic as it is to a scientist.
Well, Joe, she just died on me. I'd say the gas line's clogged. You think so? How do you know? Well, it could be, couldn't it? Yes, it could be, but it could be any number of other things, too.
The first thing a mechanic has to do is determine what the problem is. Next, he makes a preliminary investigation to find possible solutions. Then, he develops his hypotheses. Next, he tests these hypotheses, discarding them one by one if they prove false, until finally he hits upon the right solution to the problem. With problems of this kind, of course, almost everyone tries to think systematically. But some people find it hard to apply the scientific method to all the other problems that can be solved through observation and experimentation.
Did you hear? There's another epidemic down at the south end of town.
Oh, how terrible. You know, I think the town ought to do something about conditions down there.
Do something? What can they do? Look at the kind of people that live down there.
People? What do you mean? You can't just blame people for bad living conditions, for filth and disease and things like that.
Oh, I think you can. After all, that's the way that kind of people like to live.
I'm not so sure. I think the town ought to do a study of those conditions and get at the cause of it.
Some people let prejudice dictate the answers to problems. But thinking people realize that solving such problems requires systematic observation and the gathering of many facts. All the factors bearing on the problem have to be investigated. Then, the facts have to be studied to find the best ways of solving the problem. And finally, the most promising solutions have to be tested in practice. This scientific method of thinking applies to any everyday problem which lends itself to observation and testing, to problems of business as well as to problems of family life, to problems of law enforcement as well as to problems of making the decisions of the community. This is the method of common sense thinking fully as much as it is the method of science. But the scientist uses this method for a deeper purpose, to gain an understanding of the world in which we live. For instance, long before men were able to combat disease, the causes of disease had to be discovered through years of scientific investigation. The French scientist Louis Pasteur began his work as a practical effort to stop the diseases attacking silkworms and certain animals in France. Systematic observation led him to the hypothesis that the cause of disease might be found in the bacteria present in diseased organisms. He devoted much of his life to testing this hypothesis, to a succession of careful experiments with animals. This intensive experimental work eventually enabled him to establish his hypothesis as a demonstrated theory, that bacteria are, in fact, the cause of disease. This scientific discovery brought about a revolution in the practice of medicine, enabling modern medical specialists to make great advances in understanding and conquering disease. Keen perception of problems, careful observation, imaginative development of hypotheses, rigorous testing and experimentation, choice of the most workable solutions. These are the steps essential to the scientific method of solving problems. And while most of us are not engaged like the scientist in probing the mysteries of the universe, we still may use his method in solving many of the problems of everyday life. For this, the scientific method is a tool for clear thinking and effective action.
Woohoo, science. We love it. Yeah, the scientific method really holds up, and I think peer-reviewed, it holds up, and I think that the point of science is to discover and be critical of other people's work, so that you can really, come up with like theories that are based in fact, as opposed to conjecture or bad science. Let's see what new harvest is on the prairie. Enjoy.
The road from Bureau Junction to Hennepin, Illinois, cuts through the lowlands beside the Illinois River. Flooded naturally and by man-made dikes, it is a duck hunter's paradise, with swamps and knolls all the way to the bridge at Hennepin. The river itself fills a dual role as a stream of commerce and a playground for boatmen and fishermen. On the east side of the river, beyond the crest of the Hennepin Bridge, lies a flat, gravel-based plateau of sandy farmland known as the Hennepin Prairie. As prairies go, it is not large, a little more than 6,000 acres. But for more than a century, the Hennepin Prairie has provided harvests for the farmers of the territory. Today, corn, the traditional agricultural crop in the area, gradually is being supplemented by the development of a vital new harvest on the prairie, a $150 million steel mill. The opening chip in Jones & Laughlin Steel Corporation's bid for a major piece of the bountiful Midwestern steel market. J&L, a Pittsburgh-based corporation, bought the prairie in 1965 in a bid to jump over its Midwestern competition into the path of the markets of the future. The initial mill shown in the model will occupy only a small part of the 6,000-acre site, about 300 acres in the southwestern corner. Phase 1, to be housed in this building complex, includes a 5-stand cold reduction mill and a sheet galvanizing line. Now under construction, they'll be ready for action in the spring of 1968. From these facilities will come top-quality cold-rolled steel sheets up to 80 inches in width, and a diversified galvanized product line up to 60 inches in width. Meanwhile, what's to become of the lush farms, and the hard-working farmers, and the village of Hennepin, population 391? Can rural America and heavy industry exist side by side in harmony? This study in contrasts has stirred the imaginations of sociologists, news reporters, housing developers, and the general public as the story unfolds. Hennepin faces away from the lush farmlands toward the river and is ever conscious of its heritage as a river town. In the 1600s, Father Hennepin and Father Joliet stopped to trade with the Indians on the east bank of the Illinois River at what later became Hennepin. The first building erected by white men in 1817 was a trading post. During the steamboat era of the 1800s, the village boomed as a port of call. The principal businesses in Hennepin today are 2 grain elevators which discharge corn into waiting barges for river transport. Ford Biaggi farmed the Hennepin prairie 33 years before J&L arrived. Today, he is one of more than a dozen local farmers in partnership with J&L. They have about 2,000 acres in corn, another 200 in hay and other crops, and more than 800 acres devoted to grazing land, all under the eye of a local farmer who doubles as J&L's farm manager. As construction forces started gathering, Ford and other farmers got to know many of the workers as their paths crossed during the day. And across the road in Hennepin, youngsters still tussled in the playground. Adults had picnics in the park. And the school baseball players carried on as usual, unmindful of the roar of diesel engines wafting across the prairie. Hennepin is a quiet town, but a proud one. It has 2 churches, Catholic and Methodist. It is still free enough of traffic that a child crosses the road without real danger. Out on the prairie, after site grading, trucks began pouring 165,000 cubic yards of concrete for the foundations for the heavy mill equipment. This concrete pad, the base for the 5-stand cold mill, is 5 feet thick and contains 6,000 cubic yards of concrete. Row upon row of foundations for mill columns dotted the work area. And as work progressed on J&L's part, the people of the territory were also on the move. Several farmers who had owned property on the prairie made arrangements with J&L to buy back their houses and then move them to new locations, some to the village, some to other farm areas. Some of the owners exchanged their property for new farms further west, Others retired to watch the industrial transformation. Many of the farms had been operated by tenant farmers, and J&L offered every tenant on the property a chance to continue farming alongside the growing mill. Building a steel mill involves planning in advance for protecting the quality of air and water. A mile-deep well was drilled on the property to dispose of waste acids. Air velocity and direction were sampled. Dustfall was measured. And the water of the Illinois River was tested on a continuing basis. Hennepin is proud of its school system. Although small, only 13 in its last senior class, most of its graduates went on to college. With the coming of industry, people realized that better education could be obtained over a wider area with the benefit of a broad industrial tax base. Shortly after J&L announced its plans, a county-wide single school system was organized. One group of high school students interested in science heard about J&L's plan to survey the site for archaeological artifacts. A study being conducted by the Illinois State Museum. Several of the students volunteered to conduct a dig on the 14 Indian mounds found by museum archaeologists in a remote corner of the property. Early that first summer, they spent a week among the mosquitoes. Their loot was both disappointing and promising. 1 arrowhead and 5 broken pieces of pottery. But the scientists have earmarked other areas on the site for additional digging. Meanwhile, on the construction site, digging proceeded at a different level. This mainline storm sewer will be as much as 40 feet underground. Other lines were also being laid. More than 7 miles of railroad track were required to serve the site during construction. And a gas line was run from the north side of the Illinois River, underneath the river, up the steep hills on the south side, and more than 3 miles inland across the prairie to the J&L work area. Another major project is an elaborate water and waste treatment system capable of taking more than 7.5 million gallons of water a day from the river, cleaning it, using it in the mills, cleaning it again, and returning it to the river. The plant has been designed so all industrial wastewater, no matter where it originates, must pass through the waste treatment plant. J&L officials have stated flatly that the plant operations will not adversely affect the quality of the river water. This means recreational uses of the river may continue unchanged. Motorboating and fishing enthusiasts may pursue their activities, and the duck hunters are expected to continue their fall pilgrimages to the river swamplands, undisturbed by the frenetic activity on the construction site less than a mile away. J&L is planting for a new crop on this Midwestern prairie, and its harvest will complement the corn, soybeans, and other crops which have been sown on the Illinois countryside for generations. Yes, the farmer who stood on this lawn and gazed across the Hennepin prairie will never again see this sight. This is what he sees now. There will be many changes affecting Hennepin, but the village has solid roots. Putnam County, with Hennepin as its county seat, once was the largest county in Illinois. The beautiful courthouse is the oldest county courthouse in continuous use in the state. Abraham Lincoln is said to have practiced there as a young lawyer. This heritage has played an important role in providing inspiration for the future as J&L and the community look ahead to the new harvest on the Hennepin Prairie.
Looking up in Hennepin County. Obviously, this is a promotional film, maybe shown to the people of Hennepin County, maybe trying to get incentives or the ability to say, like, well, you know, maybe we don't pay as many taxes because we're actually employing more people, or maybe you'll let us use the utilities for cheaper because we're benefiting the community in the county. But kind of a fascinating promotional film, but not promoting specifically the products, but just the fact that they're locating a factory there. Thanks for tuning in today and dealing with all the tech stuff. I mean, it's not really an AV Geek show unless there's some tech stuff. I'm always pushing the envelope, and there's always something going on. You know, we're embracing almost more than 100 years of technology in an hour. So there's always something that's going wrong. And so thanks for tuning in today, and we will see you again, I don't know, tomorrow. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Please remember to please rewind and love each other. And we will see you. Oh, wait a minute. Thank you, Kevin, for the coffee. You can support AV Geeks by buying us coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can support us by hitting the thumbs up button, the subscribe button, the like button, the share button. If you like what you saw, you can go to avgeeks.com and see our 24/7 channel, now with less advertising. That it was an experiment that didn't really work out well, so you're welcome to go there. Also, you can donate to AV Geeks at patreon.com/avgeeks. Everybody, like I said, have a great rest of your day. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Take care.